Hello, my name is Mark, and you are listening to Cutouts.
I got all the rest of my life to figure out what I didn't get right. I got all the rest of my days to figure out how I let you slip away. Take me back to the nights that I never forgot. Cigarettes crushed in a parking lot, singing along with the pop radio. Baby, one more time. Take me back before it all fell apart. Cigarettes crushed on an open heart. Take me back to 1999. I got all the rest of my years to figure out how I wound up here. I got all the rest of my hours to cry and moan and sing sad songs in the shower. Take me back to the nights that I never forgot. Cigarettes crushed in a parking lot, singing along with the pop radio. Baby, one more time. Take me back before it all fell apart, before you broke my heart. Take me back to 1999. We thought it would last forever. The 31st of December, singing along with the pop. Parties over, whoops, out of time. Take me back before it all came unglued. Back when I had you. Take me back to 1999.
Welcome to Cutouts. My name is Mark, and on this episode, I'll be talking with Andy of the Airport 77s about their 2025 album, Don't Let Go. You know, it's interesting. I've mentioned this before. 2026 has been a time for me to bring newer bands to the podcast. I've been going to see a lot of shows, and I buy a lot of records at those shows, and then I have the bands on, and that's been great. This has been a great year for discovering new music. Well, not discovering new music, but for newer bands to be represented on the podcast. And the Airport 77s are no different. The difference is they're not quite the punk rock that I've been showcasing. This is pure, straight up, dripping with pop, power pop. And for all the bands that I've had on and all the bands that I love that are certainly that 1981 new wave power pop sound, these guys encapsulate it quite perfectly, in my opinion, for an album that comes out in 2025. We talk about the usual suspects. We talk about how the band got together and things of that nature. But we also dig a little bit into the power pop revolution that was the late 70s into the early 80s and a little bit beyond that, and the influences that they've had that really kind of anchor them really solidly in the power pop genre. So let's get into it. I would like to welcome Andy from the Airport 77s to the podcast. How you doing, Andy?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Thanks for being on the show. This is an interesting one. For as much as I scour Discogs and I scour record shops and flea markets and antique stores, and I find all these great records, this one was a little bit more organic than that. My friend, John Dean, who is a guy I've known for the last 40 plus years, loves you guys. And was like, apparently he does press stuff for a local airport in town. And he's talked to your drummer, John, who works for the Post or something like that. So he's like, right. Oh yeah, these guys are great. So we came to a show that you were doing, and I don't even remember where it was. It was a park. It was like in the dusk thing. This was back in October of 2025. Where was this?
That was probably Sligo Creek Golf Course.
It was
in Silver Spring, Maryland.
It was,
which they reached out to us and were like, rocking out on a golf course. What's the pay? Okay, sure, whatever. And the first time we did it, which was a while back, we show up and we set up and we're like, okay, this will be weird. And there was like 800 people there. And so we do that every summer, maybe twice a summer, and it's always just fantastic, because it's like you're out of the usual context of rock club. You're just playing to people in a big open space. If you're lucky, the weather's lovely, which it often has been.
And it was for my show that I was at, yes.
Yeah. And so you have to sort of reach out to the crowd in a different way. They tend to be sitting down, eating hamburgers, throwing frisbees around. So it takes a different strategy to draw them in. But usually we do 2 sets, and by the end of the second set, we've got the dance floor up front pretty filled up. First it starts off with the toddlers, and then like their moms come up to chase them, and then like the dads are like following the moms, and then like you get the old people who don't give a crap, and before you know it, it's like just a party.
Yeah,
so it's always a fantastic show. Yeah, we were due to play there in May, and it got rained out, and so we're trying to set a makeup date in October.
Love it. I'll be there.
Stay tuned.
Well, and that's just it.
Nice.
So John says who wants to go, and like 4 of us went to this show. These are just guys I've known for decades, and John was really, really excited. He's like, I think you're really going to like this band, to me, because he knows that I'm the power pop fan and the new wave fan. So we went to the show, and it's just it really is. It's just a bunch of 3 to 7 year olds running around, and it was a blast. And the weather was great, and there was hamburgers, and it was great. So I bought this from you. I put money in your hand. I didn't really put money in your hand.
Yes, I remember that.
You do.
Thank you.
Do you really remember that?
I do, yeah. I'm like, who's this cool rocker buying my record?
No, it's the beard.
And you
it's
gave me
not
a
cool.
sticker.
I did give you a sticker. I did give you a sticker.
Yeah, so here we are nearly a year later talking.
So the show was great. And I want to talk a little bit about that show. We're going to come back around to the show, because there's questions I have about that particular lineup. But I bought the record and I took it home, and it's rock and roll, and it's everything that I love in power pop. And I'm actually going to take 30 seconds and for as much punk and hardcore and synth pop and all the Depeche Modes and all the Minor Threats that I grew up on through the 80s, and then the grunge scene of the 90s, people's musical foundations are acquired way earlier than that. You really kind of solidify things when you're in your teen years and you're in high school and middle school.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And a product of the 80s. You're probably a little bit younger than me, but you're probably a product of the 80s, 90s as well. And
yeah, I mean, my formative pop music tastes were, 1978 to 1984 or so, right?
Oh.
That's when your brain is still plastic enough to absorb all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like you start off with your parents' Beatles records, and then you listen to the radio, and then you go on your own little quest, and from there. But like for me, it's the Cars' first LP.
Well, and that's where I was going to get it. So Yes, the Beatles, Meet the Beatles, and Hot August Nights from Neil Diamond. I mean, my parents' record collection was a lot of that. It was a lot of the 60s and 70s.
Right.
But being a product of the late 70s and early 80s myself, the radio dictates how you
Yep.
feel about music. And so for me, it was the Cars, and it was Huey Lewis and the News, and it was Michael Jackson. And, as much as I got into punk and synth pop later on and all that, it's the formative years were just solely pop. And it was, I remember getting Heartbeat City in '84 for Christmas. I mean,
That's a tough record for me.
Oh, it's
because it was like it had a lot of hits on it, but like the production was so over the top.
It was over the
That's
top.
when they were working with Mutt Lange, and so like the drums all sounded like cannon shots, and it didn't sound like the band. Like you listen to those first four records, up through Shake It Up, and it's like this is a band, this is people talking to each other in a rehearsal space, being like, okay, put the synth line here, put the guitar line here.
Well, they were working with Baker for the first four records.
Right.
And all of a sudden Lang comes in and they do this is the first record they do with a different producer, and it's a different sound. I like it, but keep in mind that I didn't grow up with it. I grew up with Shake It Up. I grew up with Panorama.
Yeah.
I grew up with all the other albums. So then in '84, when I'm 13 years old and I'm getting this for Christmas, it was all over the radio, and it was everything that I wanted to be, especially because as a synth player, Greg Hawkes is just front and center on on that record.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when I first heard you guys, it was at the show, but when I first heard the record, I was like, yeah, this brings me right into that mindset of 8, 9, 10-year-old me listening to the radio, getting that, the tight harmonies of the Cars, the Do You Believe in, which is also Mutt Lange, Do You Believe in Love, from Huey Lewis and the News.
Oh my God, great song.
It is, well, Mutt Lange, but it's one of those things where...
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, he wrote that song.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying is it brought me right back into that wheelhouse where I was kind of like, this is exactly what I grew up on. Not what my friends were introducing me to, but what the world, the universe was introducing me to. This album is fantastic. It's on Gem Records. Came out in 2025. I went back and listened to you have two other records. Rotation came out in 2021, and we realized you have a choice in 2022. I'll be honest with you. This record to me, which is the one we're talking about, but this record to me is a little bit more polished. It's a little bit more down tempo. You have the rockers on there, but it seems like, especially on Rotation, it's just a balls to the wall power pop experience. The guitars are up and the drums are loud. And here you take it down a little bit, something like Satellite on this record. You pull it back, and it's a little bit more maturity. And this record's great. I like all your records. This is the only one I have, but they're all great. So.
Thanks, man. Well, Rotation, our first EP, was a real statement of purpose. It was our sort of minor step out of Threat. I was a brash young 51-year-old. I had a lot of piss and vinegar. I had to prove things. And, since then I've matured. So, as I reached my mid-50s, all of a sudden I wanted to take a step back.
Yeah, we're the same age. I'm in my mid-50s as well.
Right.
So we're on the same page. It's just so interesting how the harmonies, you encapsulate power pop so well in your music. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So I bought this from you at the golf course, outdoor gig. Weather was beautiful. I had a burger. I listened to good music. Tell me how this band got started, because, and I'm going to delve into this a little bit later, you and John on drums. So it's you on vocals and guitar, John's on drums, Cal is on bass and vocals, but that wasn't always the case. Your bass player situation seems to be a little bit more a rotation. So how did this band get started? Because Cal wasn't the original bassist, and the time I saw you last year, it was a completely different bass player as well. How did the band get started?
Correct. The band got started when John Kelly, the drummer, and Chuck Dolan, the bass player, recruited me. They were looking for a power pop trio to play covers, and we had played in a battle of the band situation, and they had seen the band I was playing with, Dirty Bomb. We were promoting a rock opera about the corrupt lobbyist Jack Abramoff, and they
That's
liked
deep.
Yeah, bit of an obsession. And they liked what I was doing, and so they reached out to me, and Dirty Bomb was sort of coming to an end. And we got together, and they said, we want to form a power pop cover band. You know, we want to play Elvis Costello, we want to play Nick Lowe, we want to play the Paul Collins Beat, we want to play Maya Sharona, we want to play Jesse's Girl. And I hadn't heard, you know, I was familiar with the hits, but I wasn't familiar with the deep cuts of the power pop genre. And so we got together and quickly we hit it off. Like, it was apparent that, like, you know, those guys are good musicians. You know, they could sing. They're like, they rock, but they're not bashers. And so I fit right in. And so I learned the songs they had pulled together for a set. And it was this wonderful mix of obscurities. You know, I've Got Your Number written on the back of my hand by the Jags. The Girl of My Dreams by Bram Tchaikovsky, and then, you know, What I Like About You, but the Romantics and stuff. So we just started playing around DC, the suburbs, the VFW circuit, and it was apparent that, like, people like this music. You show up and you start performing and you play this up-tempo, snappy, harmony-laden power pop that then you can lean back and take a ripping guitar solo. Like, people respond to that, you know. Males and females alike. And often, you know, with rock music, it's a dude-centric thing. And so we always tried to appeal to the ladies as well. So, you know, that's what we did for about 8 years or so. And it was fun, playing street festivals, playing parties, playing VFWs. And then COVID hit, and we're all sort of idled. And, you know, I've been a songwriter since I was 14 in various bands, various levels of success. But I hadn't written for this band, really. And then this allowed me to sort of, we're all stuck in our basements. And I started thinking, okay, can I write songs in this specific tradition, within this genre, you know, that fit the capabilities of the players, that fit with, you know, what Chuck can do on the bass and John can do on the drums and what we can do as singers. And so we developed a bunch of songs and recorded them at Inner Ear, which is the sort of legendary punk rock temple in Arlington, Virginia. And that was a fun project. And that came out, and it, you know, who knows, like, everybody's still basically isolated in January 2021. And we got a pretty surprising response, you know, both locally and also within the broader sort of power pop community. You know, we've sold a lot of records in Spain, which I guess is a power pop hotbed.
Who knew?
Yeah. And so so then we sort of started making this transition to an original band. And that can be tricky, you know, when you've built up a very modest local following, but the people show up expecting to hear Jesse's Girl. And, you know, Andy, the prima donna singer-songwriter, is like, I don't want to play Jesse's Girl anymore. I want to play the song I wrote that sounds like Jesse's Girl. And so, you know, we started doing that, and it's been a sort of gradual shift over the years. And the original bass player, Chuck Dolan, tapped out after we made our second record with Gem, which was We Realize You Have a Choice, which I feel like I'm really proud of what we did there, but, you know, maybe I probably went a little too hard on it.
How so? It's a rocker.
Yeah, I mean, just personally, I guess, you know.
Okay.
Sorry, Chuck. You know, I mean, I guess, like, I know what I want, and I started really pushing to get it, and you know, I think that's not what he signed up for. I think we've sort of talked it out, but we haven't fully talked it out. And I mean, he's a fantastic musician and a great guy, and I think we're still friends, but you know, it's
If
a
you're
learning
listening,
experience.
give Andy a call. He's waiting by the phone for your call.
So yeah, that record came out, and we were still playing, and we had a sort of a monthly residency at a VFW, but COVID was still sort of flaring up and down, And so people would come out and then they wouldn't come out for the next month because we'd be back in lockdown. And then finally COVID receded and
I'm
we
sorry.
needed a new bass player.
Well, who was playing bass for you? So I'm sorry, was it Doug?
Chuck Dolan.
Chuck.
Yeah.
When Chuck
Yeah.
left, I didn't write his name down because he's not on this record. When
Right.
Chuck left, you just stopped playing. I mean, obviously it was COVID. Well, no, it was 2022 when the second album came out.
Yeah. This is all
So who's playing
happening,
bass for you
know.
in the meantime, or are you just not?
I think Chuck put in his notice. We played a few shows after the new record came out, and he said, "This is too much for me. We're playing every weekend. We're playing original stuff. This isn't what I signed up for. I signed up for playing covers once every 2 months or so, which is totally understandable."
No, I get it. Some people.
So then we had-
that's what they need to do.
Yeah, that wasn't the original premise of the band. And so then we needed a new bass player. And fortunately, at that point, we'd had enough of a reputation around Washington, D.C. that, people knew of us and we could get recommendations. And we got hooked up with Cal Everett, who sort of made his mark in the early 80s with a band called 4 to 5 Doctors, sort of mainstream pop / power pop band signed to CBS Records. They were like sort of definitely at a professional, successful level. They opened for the Cars, they toured, they did all that stuff. And so Cal joined, and he was just a fantastic musician. Just like, I think of him as McCartney-esque. He's just has a real melodic gift on the bass guitar and as a singer and as a songwriter. And so we worked with him on this record that you've got, Don't Let Go. And so it's got 2 songs that Cal wrote on it, and then the rest of them are really stamped with his, really original bass playing and harmony singing. And so we started putting the material together for this next record, and we had a little more time to do it. And as you pointed out, it's a bit more varied than the first 2. It's not sort of straight up rock and roll start to finish. It's the tempo varies, the textures vary. We try some stuff we wouldn't do otherwise.
And that's not a
it
bad
ends with
thing.
2. Yeah.
When I mentioned that, it's not that I like Rotation as a better album than this. It's you certainly have that when you get to 1999, when you get to She's Everything, that power pop aesthetic is right there along with the first 2 albums. I just noticed that there's a lot more reflection, almost.
Yeah.
In the way you're writing, and so it's almost like you said to yourself, I don't need to turn to 11 and play power pop songs. I can take it down a notch, and I think that works for the record. The sequence of the record is great too. That you start on a high note, and then Satellite I think is the last on the album, where it's just nice and chill. Yeah.
That one is a tough one. That one's about having a teenage kid who grows apart from you, and which can be a really heartbreaking thing. So that was sort of a tough one to write and a tough one to perform, and I feel sort of more exposed emotionally than I would have otherwise. And the song before that, The Hands of Time, is written by John, the drummer, and sung by him, which is sort of the first time he's took a lead vocal on the record. So it was also a chance for us to be like, all right, let's try this, John. Let's give it a go. And I thought that turned out really, really nice as well.
That's a great song too. It's actually, again, retrospective. The way, there's no lyric sheet with this. So I'm actually, I had this on earlier today. I had the day off of work. So I had this on today just to kind of, I do this a lot. I lay on the floor of the studio because it's carpeted. I just lay on the floor of the studio and I just listen to music, and I just kind of close my eyes and I just let it happen instead of sitting or
Nice.
or making dinner or whatever the case may be. So that's what I'm saying. Not that they weren't introspective for the first 2, but it's almost like there's a lot more heartfelt lyrics when I'm listening to this album compared to the other 2.
I'd say
my
it's a more
takeaway.
personal. It's a more personal record, whereas the first 2 we were like, let's accomplish a goal. Let's write a bunch of good rock and roll songs that everybody can identify with. And this one is, we take a few more artistic chances, I think. So I'm glad you liked it.
I do. And just as an aside, it's funny. I read an article online about how the Jags kind of influenced you, and I was like, oh, that's such a good record. So I pulled out. I have that on vinyl, so I pulled that out,
Nice.
and I listened to that the other day as well because I was like, oh yeah, that's such a good record. It's
Yep.
interesting you bring up the early '80s on CBS records. 4 to 5 Doctors, which if you're under the age of 30, you have no idea what that means, but that's okay. I'm not here to explain it. That's what Google's for. But with Cal being on 4 to 5 Doctors, I have found doing this podcast, the podcast, before the podcast, I was just listening to what I wanted to listen to. But since the podcast, it's about discovering new music, and there's so much that I've discovered that are on major labels, new wave, power pop, just that whole genre that are on major labels, and then that's it. They put out an album,
Yep.
maybe two, and then they're gone, and nobody hears about them. I interviewed a band, Cold Blue. I interviewed if you're from DC area, Urban Verbs. Two records
Right,
on a
yeah.
major label. Nobody knows who they are, and that's sad because that album, the first album especially, is just so great. All right, I'm going off on a tangent.
Well,
Let's-
if I can stay on that tangent with you for
Yes,
a minute,
I'd love it.
have
That's why
two
I do this.
observations. Yeah. So the first is power pop had this very brief sort of commercial efflorescence between like 1979 and 1981. The Knack had their huge hit with My Sharona and Get the Knack, and I think the label said, let's sign up everybody. Let's get the Dwight Twilley band. Let's get 2020, and they signed all these acts. Let's get the Paul Collins beat, and they make these really beautiful, awesome sounding major label records, and then none of them were hits, and they all got dropped and they disappeared. But there's this just sort of corpus of work from that period that
Yeah.
like sounds super professional and sounds really great, and it's like, wow, this is like Tom Petty's "Damn the Torpedoes," except for I'd never heard it before.
And that's
And then
what I
the second-
love is me going out
Yeah.
into the record stores and look it up on Discogs. What kind of music is this? Oh, it's 1982 new wave power pop for $5. Of course I'm
Sign
going to
me
give
up.
this a try. Of course I am. I'm sorry, your second
Yep.
point.
Second point is in the 90s when I was trying to make a go of it as a musician, I had friends who were signed to major labels, and you're like, oh my God, this is it. This is their big break. And then you realize the major labels were sort of scooping up everybody and giving them $10,000 to make a record. And they'd put it out and they'd sort of throw it up against the wall and see if it would stick, And so there's no guarantee if you have that CBS or that Warner's or that Columbia label behind you that, it's going to be promoted and it's going to be a hit, because they just are putting out a whole bunch of stuff and they've decided to get behind one or two of them.
Which is
So,
why I'm sorry.
sorry.
Well, I was going to say
So,
it's there's just the two of us. No
Yeah.
one's listening to this. So my point was that's why I look for Rough Trade and Sub Pop and the labels that were major indies, but they were the ones that took the chances before DGC came in and just bought everybody out.
right. Good ears. SST, that sort of thing.
SST. I just bought an SST record from someone I've never heard from the other day. So
Who's that?
I don't know. I'll tell you when we're done with this because it's behind me. I haven't filed it away yet. But
All right.
it's like folk punk, and I was like on SST. I'll give anything a shot on SST for a couple bucks.
Sure.
So let's. There's other things, of course, we need to talk about. We don't need to. We can talk about this all day. I want to finish up with your bass rotation. So Cal at some point leaves, or maybe he doesn't. I saw you at Sligo Creek, and there was a young lady playing bass. What I think is fantastic, and I don't know how often you do this, but you stick with the whole theme. You guys were dressed as airline pilots because you're the Airport 77s, and she was dressed as a flight attendant, which I thought was interesting. Or maybe she wasn't, but she had that sweater on, and that navy blue sweater made her look like a flight attendant. So when did that transition happen in the bass player field?
So that's Gina Coco, and she's been with us since the beginning of 2025, and she's fantastic. She's a great singer. It's really nice to have high harmonies above me. I'm a tenor, and so like she can go high, or sometimes she sings below me, or sometimes it gives me the luxury of singing the lower part and give my voice a break. She's a super solid bass player and a great person too. So yeah, we did the record with Cal, and Cal was a bit older than us and lives in West Virginia, 3 hours away. And for him to make the drive in for practice every week got to be a bit much. And so it was nice. It was great to have him on that record, and he's all over that record. And it was great to do gigs with him. But it's pretty clear that, like, playing rock and roll with, trying to get a band together with grown-ups is logistically challenging.
Trying to do anything with grown-ups.
Totally.
Hey, we're going out for a beer. You want to go? No, I got this, that, and the other. What are you going to do?
Exactly. Yeah. And so try to get like, okay, let's get weekly practice together and then let's get some shows together. It becomes real tricky. So it was great to have him with us for the 2 years that we did. And, Gina's playing with us for a while and is fantastic. And we're developing new material gradually and sort of organically, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. It's interesting. Your harmonies on this, your harmonies on everything that I've listened to is great. Your harmonies on this are tight. And I didn't notice it at the time. I just thought she was your bass player because I didn't have this record in hand yet. But certainly having that dynamic of the high and the low, an alto and a tenor, or a soprano and a tenor, can make a difference.
She's everything, she's everything, she's everything to me. She's everything, yeah, she's everything, she's everything to me. And anyone can see there's nothing else I need, 'cause she's everything. She's water, but when I get thirsty, she's soap. But when I get dirty, she's crayons. But when I need color, she's dope. But when I need to get high, I know she's everything. She's everything. She's everything to me. She's everything. Yeah, she's everything. She's everything to me. And anyone can see there's nothing else I need, 'cause she's everything. She's dinner, when I get hungry, she's cash. When I need money, she's answers. When I've got questions, she's wings. When I'm ready to fly, I know she's everything. She's everything. She's everything to me. She's everything, yeah, she's everything. She's everything to me. And anyone can see there's nothing else I need. She's everything. She's morning and afternoon, evening and on into night. She's touch and she's taste and she's smell and she's sound and she's sight. Oh, alright. She's everything to me, everything to me. She's everything to me. She's everything I dream about. She's everything I can't live without. She's everything I need today. She's everything in every way. She's everything. She's everything. She's everything to me. She's everything, yeah, she's everything. She's everything to me. And anyone can see there's nothing else I need, 'cause she's everything.
We've talked a little bit about influences. I'm kind of all over the place here. I have a list that I like to talk about, pretty standard fare, but we already got into the influences a little bit because I said the Cars. So these are the influences that I wrote down as who I think you sound like I'd like to hear your influences, but I'm going to tell you who I think you sound like first. The Cars, the Beach Boys. And I was thinking, these guys sound a little Beatlesque. And then I was like, it may be in the harmonies, but your songwriting lends itself to a lot of what Brian Wilson was writing, especially towards the end of the Beach Boys before he left. Sloan.
It's okay. Yeah, I can hear both of those. So back up a little bit. Beach Boys, I'd say that's Cal. One of Cal's gigs is like a Beach Boys cover band. You know, they'll fly him out to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, pay him $800 or whatever, and they do Help Me Rhonda. So like that's probably what he's bringing to it.
Interesting.
I like the Beach Boys fine, but I've never been like it's all a little chamber poppy to me. You know.
Yeah, but when I understand what you're saying. From a guy who loves the power pop genre, it's hard to escape what the foundation that they, or the Beatles, a song like Paperback Writer, that they've brought to the table so that bands in the 70s and the early 80s could actually run with it.
Yep.
Sloan, I don't know if you Sloan out of Canada. Do you know them?
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah,
I thought you sounded a lot like Sloan, especially. I mean, I got into Sloan back in college, back in the 90s, and they were a little bit rougher around the edges then, which I liked. But if you listen to the last 2 or 3 albums that they've put out, super polished, super great harmonies, super great instrumentation, and I thought you guys, this album especially, sounded a lot like that. And then, Def Leppard.
Oh my golly, yes.
Because
absolutely,
if anyone
100%.
but you is not going to be copyright striked by anyone in Def Leppard, I don't know what's wrong.
Yes, no, that's not Cal's fault. That's entirely my fault. You know, he wrote this beautiful ballad, and I said, let's move it up to the key of E, and let me try to play Photograph over it.
Yeah, it sounds great. But as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, did I put on the wrong record? I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, no, I've always been a huge Lep fan, man. Like those guys. There's just it's the harmonies. They got chops. There's that sheen. I know they're not super stylish, but like you said about that, you know, when your brain is plastic enough, and I got pyromania, and yeah, it went way down into the spinal column.
Also, Mutt Lange, throwing that out there.
Mutt Lange, yeah, it's true.
So, who are your influences? I mean, maybe we've hit them all, but that's what I was pulling from this album's body of work. Who are your influences? Not just for this album, but for Rotation and Have a Choice as well. You don't stray too far away from the power pop, pocket. Who are your influences for this band?
And that's right, and that's a conscious choice. You know, you're like, this is a project. The project is tightly defined. We're going to be a power pop band. We're going to stay within the boundaries of that genre, which is liberating and also a bit challenging, because you're like, okay, we know what we're trying to do, but we need to try to make it fresh and interesting, but also sticking to familiar themes. So, because the band was a cover band for a long time before we developed original material, we have firm foundations in the Paul Collins beat, in the Jags, in the Romantics, all that stuff. So, all the usual sort of power pop bands from that era, 2020, I'm not above a little Jesse's Girl, Rick Springfield. So just that whole thing was sort of tightly defined. And you mentioned the pilot outfits. We often wear pilot outfits on stage, and that's sort of liberating as well. Instead of going to the gig and being like, oh, what jeans am I going to wear? What cool shirt am I going to wear to make people think I'm a cool rock and roll guy? You're like, no, we're just going to dress up like idiots, and it's going to be liberating for the band and for the audience. It's a signal that we're not taking ourselves too seriously. And within that, then we can actually be good. If people are like, hey, look, they're pilots, that's cute. And they're like, oh, they actually sound pretty good. Oh, I actually like them. I think I might buy their record. You can only go up from there.
That's exactly the thought process in order that went through my head before I purchased it.
Right. Because otherwise you're just like a bunch of middle-aged dudes like trying to be serious, and the world doesn't need that.
It not now. Recording this in 2026, no, not now.
Right.
let's talk about a little bit about the recording process for this particular record. Hit and Run Recordings in Rockville, Maryland. Actually, before we do that, let me get something out of the way. You are a Silver Spring band, but
Yes.
you're a DC band. Like if you're
Yes.
playing Boise, Idaho, you're not going to say I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, because everyone's going to be like, where the hell's Silver Spring, Maryland? But if you say we're from DC, it's or do you say we're a Silver Spring band? I mean, how loyal are you to the state of Maryland?
I think we definitely like to think of ourselves as a Silver Spring band because it's this distinct little corner of the DC metro area. It's very diverse. It's a little it's dynamic. It's sort of middle class in a way that a lot of the metro area isn't. It's got some great places to play, some great places to eat. And, that's sort of where we practice, and a lot of our gigs are within a 10-mile radius of there. We've played the cool downtown rock and roll DC clubs, but that's sort of not our scene at this point. Our scene tends to be the VFWs, the Hank Deedleses, the places like that. That's where our audience is, and that's where we've sort of had our best show. Of course, if we're going to play, we played New York a few times, we've played out of town a few times, and, we introduce ourselves as a DC band. And that has its own sort of connotations. Everybody, this city has a very distinctive musical history.
Yes, it does.
People immediately think, Minor Threat and Bad Brains.
And Go-Go.
And yes, absolutely. And right, Trouble Funk and Rare Essence, etc. And so it sort of helps you put a pin on the map. And I would say Minor Threat is one of the foundational bands for me. Like, it doesn't show up with the Airport 77s, but when I was trying to figure out what kind of rock and roll I would play, like, okay, that having that energy and that focus was always sort of at the core of what I was trying to do, whether it was, sort of country punk or, straight up rock and roll.
Well, and it's the same for me. Growing up outside DC, I'm Montgomery County, born and raised. And so when you get to that middle school, high school age, now it's 1986 and it's 1987, and you're firmly in high school, and you're introduced to all this stuff. As much as I was being introduced to The Cure and New Order, it's here's some Black Flag, here's some Minutemen, here's some Minor Threat. And I never saw Minor Threat live. They broke up before I was able to catch a show. I was in my early mid-teens. But God, I mean, Fugazi, I've seen them a ton. It's just, You're right. It's foundational. So as much as I have all these synthesizers around the studio, and I do listen to the Depeche Mode as much as I listen to anything else, you grew up in a particular place and time, and I'm sure if you were in Boston, it was SSD Control, and I'm sure if you were in Minnesota, it was Husker Du. But for us, it was Minor Threat. That was what you grew up with, Bad Brains and all that good stuff.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I moved to the DC area when I was about 30 for work. And before that, I'd spent 10 years in the Twin Cities. And so I was a Husker Du replacement, Soul Asylum, Prince kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
So that also is deep in the bloodstream.
We're going so off topic, and I couldn't be happier. Seriously, I couldn't be happier. Hit and Run recording in Rockville, Maryland. And it says on the record, your basement, which is what you're sitting in right now. So this took about a year to record, and you produced it yourself, which is great.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the recording process for this. I mean, obviously, drums aren't done in the little room you're in right now, so those are probably done at Hit and Run. And then it's the nice thing about home studios is once you get the drums down, you can just take it all home and just spend all day every day putting whatever you want down over the drums. And I don't know if that's what Andy's basement means.
Yes, that's absolutely what happens. Is you get a good basic track in a professional studio where the guy who knows what he's doing gets it mic'd up, and then you bring it home and you can take your time. You can do 80 trillion vocal takes if you want to get the one you want. You can try a million different guitar tones, with this amplifier, that amplifier, this guitar, and you don't have that sort of pressure that you have traditionally had in a commercial studio where, you're paying by the hour and you have to get it done in a certain amount of time, which was basically how we did rotation and how I had done records up until that point.
Well, that's how we all done records because we all had computers in the 90s, but they weren't the way they are now.
Right.
And I still have my 4-track because in the 80s and the early 90s, that's what you were using. You're using a 4-track cassette to at least get a demo out to a club so you can play a show there. But yes, I think that there's a luxury now that the kids today don't know the hardships of 30, 40 years ago, where, you really can just spend hours upon hours upon hours getting it right.
Which can be a curse,
It can be a curse.
Because, you can go way down the rabbit hole, and I've definitely done that. And at a certain point, you have to say, okay, this is good enough. Nobody's noticing the difference between take 87 and take 92.
Right. And it's 3:00 in the morning, and you've worked tomorrow.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
you know that you got that take an hour and a half ago. Just go to bed.
Yeah.
It is a rabbit hole. We've all been there. So.
But the nice thing is it gives me a lot more latitude to experiment with arrangements too. In terms of okay, do we want this vocal approach? Do we want this guitar thing or no? Whereas if you're Tom Petty back in the 80s, you could have done that. But if you're the Paul Collins beat, you couldn't have done that, because you had to get in and get out.
Right. Or even just, yes. And that's just it, is that even when you own a 4-track or an 8-track and you have the time to do it, there are still limitations that today's recording situation doesn't really give you.
You need a microphone and a computer, and you can get a lot of stuff done.
Tell me a little bit about, as a gearhead, I like knowing the gear that people use. It's just you, so I'm going to talk to just you about it, but on the bottom of the record, it says that you actually use, I don't even know how to pronounce this. I don't know this guitar company, but you use a particular guitar, and obviously you're sponsored by this company to do this.
Yes, Navalis Guitars. It's actually my brother. It's my name's Andy Sullivan, and Navalis is Sullivan backwards. So my brother Dan builds guitars out in Chicago.
What?
They're really fantastic instruments. He spent a lot of time kind of dialing it in. For the guitar nerds out there, they're sort of a BC Rich model where you've got a neck through body design, where the neck and the center part of the body is one piece of wood, so it resonates as one, and then you sort of build the wings of the guitar out to the side. And so he can sort of do these customs things. So for most of this record, I used a Navalis guitar that's sort of like a Les Paul in that it's a mahogany body with a thin maple cap to give it a little brightness with mini humbucker pickups. And then I also have one that is a solid maple guitar, so it's a brighter sound using P90 pickups, which are a little sort of crustier.
Yeah.
So you've got those
great
two
for the
different
jangle.
voices.
The P90s are perfect for the jangle aspect of things.
So I've been using his guitars since, I think the first one, he's been working on it for a long time. He really dialed it in about 5 years ago. So I play his guitars and I pay for them, and people should buy them. They're fantastic instruments.
I'm going to look them up. And I never knew of them. The fact that Sullivan backwards is Navalis is what blew my mind. So I'm glad we got that straightened out. I'd never heard of them before, but that's very interesting. And again, great guitar tone. I mean, if you're doing that through, you're just taking your time through amps, you're getting great guitar tone. And Cal, John's a great drummer as well. But as a bass player, no, I'm not really a bass player, but I enjoy playing bass more than I enjoy playing guitar. Cal certainly has that. You said McCartney-esque. I can hear it the way he's walking the lines. So there's and I'm sure that happened too. Is now he has the time to put down the lines that he wants to put down after the fact, after the drums are laid down.
No, he tracked those in the studio.
Really?
But we'd work out the arrangements. We'd develop the songs, and he would come up with the bass lines, and John would come up with the drum parts, and then we go and lay down the basics, and then I'd fiddle around with the guitars.
So you're
later
the
on.
outlier. Everything's recorded in a weekend, and then you take the year in your in your basement to get everything just right on the guitars and vocals.
Although not really. At Hit and Run, they have an amazing Marshall amplifier. It's a big fire-breathing 1979 JMT, I think, 50-watt 4x12 speaker cabinet. So like the classic, arena rock setup. And so I recorded a lot of the basics on there, and we had a little time, and I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to do the guitar solo on 1999, which is the first song on the record. And it's like a 3-minute song, and like a minute and a half of it is like glorious Purple Rain style guitar solo.
It's dirty. It's a dirty solo.
Yeah, and it's really sort of glorious, and I'm just sort of unabashedly going for it. And I'm like, well, I got to use this amp for this thing and really push some air. And so I recorded it there with that huge amplifier, really cranked up with a, Boss SD1 overdrive pedal going into it to really push it over the edge. And, it just got that sound that like, there's a lot of sort of modeling amps that try to replicate that, but you can't duplicate the actual beast. And so that was a pretty nice opportunity to use that amplifier.
That's great. No one cares, but I owned a JCM 900 50 watt, and I was
Nice.
looking at the 50 watt and the 100 watt, and I went with the 50 watt so that I could actually turn the gain up and get those tubes crunching a little bit more than you would out of the 100 watt.
Right.
So the 50 watts are the way to go, kids. Get your 50 watt.
I have two Marshall 20 watters. One is a JCM 800, which is the sort of classic 1980s version, but scaled down. And then they have what's called an Origin, which is a sort of new version of their original 1960s stuff. And that's a 20 watter that I can turn the master up to 10, really push the power tubes, and it's not totally ridiculously painfully loud. And that is a unique sound that's on all over our records, is I'll use that Origin and just turn everything up and just really, really give it that glorious full out sound.
It's interesting that you wear pilot outfits on stage, which you might not do all the time, but you did when I was seeing you play. Where does the name, the Airport 77s, come from? It's because it's very... First of all, I'm going to say this. I bought a T-shirt at your show, too. And I wear that T-shirt because I think the logo... The name is a great name, but it's also the logo... Whoever designed that logo, it almost looks like it's a throwback to the whole 70s disaster airport movies. See, I'm right on it. I got it. But
That's exactly it.
But where did the name come from?
So there actually is a disaster movie called Airport 77.
Right.
It's not very good. It's got an all-star cast. I think Burt Lancaster is on there, a bunch of other people like that. So we had been kicking around names, and we thought like the Towering Infernos, the Sinking Poseidons or whatever, and a friend of ours suggested the Airport 77s, which is ridiculous enough because there was a disaster movie called Airport, and then they made a sequel called Airport 77. And I think the whole premise, you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. It's up there for free. It's like a rich guy with his own custom 747 gets hijacked, then gets like sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and then the whole movie becomes basically an advertisement for the U.S. Coast Guard, and they come and like lift the plane off from the bottom of the ocean. It's fantastic. It's rollicking. But yeah, it was just like sort of a disaster movie fit with the sort of vibe we're going for. Pretty goofy, not too serious.
Well, and it's not too serious, but it's interesting that that's what you're pulling your name from, because your music doesn't really reflect that you're a disaster laden band. You're tight harmonies and great power pop. So it's just a very unique name. I think it's a great name. And I got to tell you, that logo is just, it's a great logo. Did you hire someone to come up
Thanks,
with that?
man. Yeah, we hired somebody, I think, over the internet, TaskRabbit or something. John found a really good designer in North Carolina, and I'm sorry I'm blanking on the guy's name,
all
but
good.
he did a great job.
Let's talk a little bit about the album art. This is actually a photograph, or maybe it's a painting. I think it's a photograph. That's a photograph
Photograph, yeah.
from Tony Frizzle. It's called Marineland, 1939. How did you procure this for the album cover?
John found it through a Library of Congress archives, I think. It's public domain, and the photographer took a photo of the swimming mermaids of Florida. There was a tourist attraction for a while where you know have women dressed up as mermaids swimming around, looking all beautiful underwater, and you could sit there and watch them swim. And there was the original photo we had picked showed a woman sort of lying on her back like she was dead. It was really haunting. And then turns out we mocked it up and everything, and I showed it to a bunch of friends. And my buddy Dan McAdam in Chicago said, "Oh, you mean like that Bill Evans album cover?" And evidently Bill Evans, the great jazz piano player, had used that exact photo for his album cover. So he said, "Okay, Plan B, don't use that one." And fortunately, there was plenty of other photos that hadn't been used for album covers as far as we knew. But that's the danger of using public domain art, I guess, is other people can use it too.
Someone beats you to it. Well, it's also interesting. It also, I think, defines the record. I noticed that a lot of times, especially back in the 80s, power pop and new wave of the 80s, Blondie and whomever, it's just the band on the cover. Like there's so much you can do with a cover, but you've decided to just have the band on the cover. And that's fine.
Well,
no, but you didn't.
Yeah, I mean,
so my point was,
we're not as attractive as Blondie.
Well, what I think is interesting is we realize you have a choice is very, I don't want to use the word kitschy, but it kind of lines up with you as a band, the Airport 77s, because it's a bunch of airline tails lined up, ready to go out and take off, or they just came in, whatever the case may be. What I find interesting is you can put whatever you want to on an album cover, and that I think reflects what's on the album. I've said that before on this podcast. The fact that you as a band have matured and progressed from just the rock and roll aspect of it, and you have the slower songs, and you have the the reflection in a lot of these lyrics. This album cover really kind of it's not a bunch of airplanes anymore. We really are taking this to another level, and I can totally see the music in the cover you've chosen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean the woman on the album cover is beautiful. She's sort of floating around. She also looks a little bit lost. She could be drowning. It's a little more. Yeah, it's a little more ambiguous and perhaps disturbing.
The bubbles here give it a little bit of a "is she okay" vibe.
Yeah, it's like Ophelia in Shakespeare's Hamlet. There's a bit of it like, oh, is this beautiful lady drowning? I hope not.
I hope not either. You do most of the writing for this record. I know that John and Cal have put their spin on the songs you've written and have written songs for this album as well. But you're the primary songwriter. Is that just is it you just come up with an idea and you bring it in and say, hey, this is what I got, or everybody learn your parts, or is it more of like a collaborative based on things you're bringing to the table?
It's over the years I tend to write the songs, and what I've found is best to not do demos that have parts for other people. Because the tendency is come up with a song, you work it out, and you're sitting in your basement fooling around with your computer and I'm going to program in the drum part and I'm going to play the perfect bass part. And the danger is you can get too wedded to that, and then you get shut off from the contributions that the people who actually know how to play those instruments might make.
Smart. So
what I tend to do is make demos that are just skeletal and give them to the other musicians and say, here's how the song goes, let's try it out. And then we get together and practice. and we bash it through 5 or 10 times in a row. And, I'll certainly have my ideas about how it should go, but I try not to say too much, because it's like they're good musicians. They'll find the part, and it is always 100% better when the musicians who know what they're doing find the part,
I agree with that. Yeah, it's their. It's not them copying something that someone else has done. It's them putting themselves into the music that is brought to the table. So I completely agree with that.
And John will often make suggestions about form too. He'll say, cut this part, repeat this part. I don't know if this lyric is working, which is super helpful too.
I don't know. I mean, you guys are mid-50s like me, so it's not like you don't have 9 to 5s, I'm sure. And I don't know what kind of tours you guys have gone on. Are there any shows or tours that have kind of stuck out that you're like, oh, I can't believe this happened down in Sacramento, whatever the case may be?
The first time we played New York was pretty great. It was at Arlene's Grocery in the Lower East Side, and it was a full house. It was a Gem Records showcase, and we just played our best, and people were into it. That was pretty great. There's been a few shows around here that have been really, really rewarding too. I feel like we always play pretty good, but then there's some times where everything just hits on all cylinders and you just lock in, and there's no better feeling in the world than that, where
it just clicks.
All the musicians are, yeah. So we've had a bunch of those. But we haven't, played too much out of town. Like you said, we're grown-ups with full lives, and so, but we play, pretty steadily around the DC region.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I was able to catch you in the DC region, and I'm sure that I will again. I really appreciate you being on the show, Andy. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. We'll catch up later because I'm probably coming to whatever your next Sligo Creek golf course show is. So I'll probably see you there in a few months.
All right.
I'll talk to you later. Well, that just about wraps it up for this episode of Cutouts. I would like to thank Andy for being on the show, and I'd like to thank you, the listener, for listening to the show. I would like to thank Craig and Brendan and Brian for being the pseudo-producers they always are, just taking their sweet time getting back to me when I have a great idea that they just immediately shoot down. I appreciate it, actually. I'd like to thank Jody for the artwork and Stacy for the web hosting and my beautiful bride, Megan, for all the support that she gives to me and this podcast. If you'd like to know what I'm doing in the world of this podcast and vinyl in general and CDs, I've been doing a lot of CDs. You can follow me over on the Instagram. I'm at cutoutspodcast. You can also support this show by heading on over to patreon.com/cutoutspodcast and helping me do a little shopping, as it were, to get some records for this podcast. If you'd like to send me that great lightsaber you're building out of Legos, you can do that over at cutoutspodcast@gmail.com. And with that, good night, everybody.
The first time that I saw her, I was thumbing for a ride. I was down to my last dollar, down to my last lie. She had a 98 Ford Focus. She had a Jones no pill could fix. She left her baby back in Richmond. She was looking for some kicks. She said, don't make it easy, it's gotta hurt. I'll lose my mind and you'll lose your shirt. We'll make it halfway around the world in a single day. We're gonna make them pay. saw her was in the Frederick County Jail. They were dosing up my cornflakes, they were censoring my mail. She brought me a cotton of camels, but she wouldn't look me in the eye. If that's all you've got to offer, then I guess this is goodbye. Yeah, it sure wasn't easy, we made it hurt. You lost your sparkle, I lost your skirt, but we both know it couldn't have ended any other way.